On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, we've had enough of me talking about draft guys. We get an expert on today's show. It's Maxwell Baumbach of No Ceilings, who's going to tell me why my takes are right or mostly wrong and talk about where the Raptors sit in the draft, 19 and 31. Are they sitting pretty? We'll get into that coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, May the 30th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. A great place to come hang out. It's free to join, and it's a great little community we got building around the show, talking draft, talking movies, talking World of Warcraft. It's all going on in there. It's a great place to come hang with a bunch of people who, just like you, like this podcast for some reason. So come and join us. It's a lovely thing. You can also support the show by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing on your favorite podcast apps. If you go and do that, it makes me feel very good, helps the algorithms, et cetera, et cetera. You can also go to YouTube and you can subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel. When you do that, hit the notification bell and you will get a push notification every single time the show goes live, so you never miss a second of that sweet, sweet Locked On Raptors action. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And we will get started here as we welcome in a wonderful guest. I've been yammering on for weeks about guys I like in the draft, having very strong opinions on guys who I mostly study up on in the day or two leading up to a podcast. We got an expert on today's show. It is Maxwell Baumbach from No Ceilings, a great draft resource if you're into that kind of thing, which I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you are into that kind of thing. So check out Maxwell's work. Maxwell, how the hell you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to be here. Obviously, I love the NBA draft, but I think the Raptors are in one of the more interesting team building predicaments going forward. So I'm super excited to talk about how this is all going to play out for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're going to get into some of your favorite kind of fits for the Raptors with the 19th pick, of course, via the Pacers, and the 31st pick via the Detroit Pistons. I also want to get a little bit into it. I didn't spring this on you before, but the idea of the Raptors kind of controlling the board for the second round at 31 with a day off now in between round one and round two. It's kind of interesting. But off the top, I just want to get into, by the way, you're also going to tell me why I'm wrong about a bunch of stuff later, which will be very fun for everybody. But off the top, I want to just get into 19 and 31 as just a place to be, or places to be, in this draft. I went on a lot before the lottery about how I was hoping the Raptors would convey their pick to the Spurs, because I didn't love the top part of this draft, and I thought the long-term outlook of the franchise would be just in a better spot to get it off the books this year. But 19 and 31 seems like kind of the place to be, or sort of the range you want to be in this draft, considering it seems like a bit of a flat talent pool. It seems like a lot of these guys are kind of eye of the beholder, and the Raptors are going to get two shots in that range. Am I sort of wearing rose-colored glasses here and be like, yeah, where they're picking is great, who needs to be up top? Or is there something to the idea of two picks in this part of the draft being kind of a good thing?
I love having two picks in this range in a class like this. So if you were just kind of casually observing the draft space, you've probably heard a lot of this is a weak draft talk. And I think that is true at the top. I think there are a lot of guys that have the potential to carve out long-term NBA roles in this class. I think the issue is at the very tippy top of this draft, there are not a lot of guys that are clear outliers in a way that is going to lead to a star path. And you're really hoping for something to break right for a lot of guys. Like Ron Holland was a really bad shooter this year. A guy like Cody Williams was a very efficient scorer who did not do much else. Zachary Reese-Shea does not have a pull-up game right now. These are real impediments to them reaching a star outcome, where if you're picking at the top of the draft, that's concerning. You want to feel better about the likelihood of reaching that level, where once you get into this range, it's pretty fun because there's a lot of guys that feel kind of safe, that have long college careers, or guys that you can really envision what their role is going to be at the next level and how they would fit into a team construct. And then there's also the fun stuff of well, what if a guy slips and then we can take a guy that was supposed to go high and it feels like we're playing with house money. Because there's
Right.
been a lot of teams are going to get their guy talk in this class where there might be a team picking at, 14, 15, 16, where a guy could slip and they'd say, hey, this is the guy that we want. We want somebody else. You want one of these role player kind of guys.
Mhm.
And then a potential high upside play could be on the board at 19. So regardless of what you're looking for and how the board shakes out, there's going to be a lot to like in those picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they're, all things considered, the path that led them to the place they're in, maybe not amazing, the decisions along the way, but I do think the way things are now set up, like they got a shot to add a couple of nice players to this sort of mix and the build going forward. And I do think they're in a nice place where they've kind of established, like, all right, like Scotty Barnes is our guy. We're filling in around him. Emmanuel quickly feels like his, co-star, his co-captain, whatever. And they're just trying to kind of fill in the gaps. And we can get into, some specific names, but, I think for me, the two big needs that I feel pretty strongly about are, number one is just wings, like more wings, get as many wings as possible. I look at the New Orleans Pelicans and I'm like, how do you get all of those wings and put them on to this basketball team? And I feel like this is a pretty decent spot for them to, sort of pick from that crew of guys. And I also think bigs as well, like a third big to kind of groom behind Jakob Poeltl to eventually succeed him, as like the sort of long-term center of the future. And there's lots of ways they could go with that. A guy like Ulrich Shamshe, for example, really stands out as like a Masai Ujiri ass pick. They might just say, you know what, this guy's going to be our starting center in 4 years. Let's take him now and figure it out later. But as far as just like the richness of guys at those two spots on the wings and in the front court, does this feel like a good spot for the Raptors to be, to get, sort of check both boxes or load up and draft a couple of wings? Like, is this kind of the spot to be for those types of players in particular?
I think so. I think a lot of people in this class are higher on a lot of the guards than I am. And if I'm looking at this team and I've got Emmanuel Quickly and I've got a guy like Scotty Barnes who I want to have the ball a lot, like I'm not particularly interested in a lot of those guys if I'm the Raptors, and just personally I'm lower on those guys. So I really like the wing crop that's available around this range. And I also really like the bigs in this class. Like I think as a scouting community, bigs have been kind of undervalued the last few years in general. And I think there's a lot of good ones that I see real, just nice paths to NBA careers available for.
That's a nice thing. And I mean, look at the NBA playoffs. Teams with lots of bigs, it seems to be a helpful thing, especially as the league skews bigger. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. It's only going to keep getting bigger as everyone now has to adjust for Victor Wembanyama ruling our lives for the next 15 years. Sort of, we'll get into specific names in a sec. But lastly, I kind of mentioned it off the top, but first time ever where it's a 2-day draft. The Raptors have the first pick on the second day. Usually round 2 is just this like, oh God, you blink and you've missed 5 picks and you have no idea what's going on. Of course, there's always that delay in reporting when the Raptors pick because they never leak their picks because they're psychos. But it just kind of goes by in a flash. And it feels like if you're in a front office trying to like make moves around the second round, it's pretty impossible. Obviously, now the Raptors are going to have a whole day with the next pick on the clock. Does that, like, I guess we don't really know what that means just yet, but that can't be a bad thing for the Raptors going into day 2, right?
I don't think so at all. I think especially when you consider the nature of this second round in general and how kind of hectic it can be and how fast moving it had been in the past. Now everyone's going to have a full day to recoup. And I think sort of the under discussed element of that is what that's going to do for key teams from a team building and salary cap perspective. They're going to have a lot more time to actually like sit down and be like, okay, well, what does it look like if we draft a guy here that we put on like a 4-year non-guaranteed deal? Or what if, could we do this? And, does this tip us into the tax or whatever, where there could be a situation where a team really likes a player that falls out of the first round. And now a team will have a whole day to think over the logistics of like, what does it look like for us to make a play to get this pick away from the Raptors? And maybe the Raptors can get multiple suitors. They can get bidders on that pick and really get extra value for it if they see something that they like more than the pick itself. So I think there's actually a ton of value to having those first couple picks on day 2. Because in the past, it had just been so frantic. Yeah.
Yeah. Why are the Pistons trading their second round picks when they're this bad? It's baffling stuff. The Piston's going to piston. We'll come back into the side, Maxwell, and we're going to get into specific names, some of your favorites for the Raptors at 19 and at 31. Again, kind of all from the same group of dudes here, but some guys you're going to want to target first versus second. We'll get into that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America, and it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more, just with one winning $5 bet. You know what bet's going to make you feel really good if it pays out is if you bet on the Edmonton Oilers to lose. Look, this is Canada. Yeah, everyone says, oh, you should root for the Canadian team that's in the playoffs. It's the patriotic thing to do. No, you root against the Canadian teams, especially the stupid Oilers. And so you go put some money, just $5 on the Dallas Stars to win in their series against the Oilers or in their next game, which I think is game 4. If you go put some money on that, and the Stars win, A, you're happy because the Oilers lost, and B, you get $150 in bonus bets to go play around with on FanDuel, so you can bet more on the Edmonton Oilers' misfortune. What a wonderful thing. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back at it here with Maxwell Baumbach from No Ceilings. Again, go subscribe to No Ceilings. It's great stuff. A lot of wonderful big boards, mock drafts, prospect breakdowns, some of the most in-depth writing on prospects you're going to find anywhere. And yesterday or 2 days ago, I can't remember, time is fake, but Khalil Ware was a subject of a piece you wrote, and I read the hell out of that before talking about Khalil Ware on this very podcast. So you have very much been informing all of what's been going on in this podcast over the last little while. So everyone go check that out. You can also go to Locked On Sports Today 24/7. It's our all-day streaming channel at Locked On, and with all of the local shows covering all the biggest stories in sports, playoffs, baseball season, NFL mini camps. People care about those apparently. It's all over there at Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Go check it out and have it run all day and don't work. Just watch that instead. All right, Maxwell. Some of your favorite guys for the Raptors at 19. We've talked about wings. We talked about bigs. You can surprise me with a guard if you want, but I feel like you're probably going to skew towards guards and bigs here. Just give me a name. Give me a reason why you feel like they may be a pretty good fit there for the Raptors at 19.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a little bit of control of the board here. Do you want to go big first or do you want to go wing first?
Let's go. Ooh, this is exciting. Let's go wing first. Let's go wing.
Let's do a boring wing to start in terms of like this guy's just not the most exciting name in the world, but I think he's going to fit the team construct of the Raptors very well. Tristan da Silva from Colorado. He is 6'8", measured well, long player, good 3-point shooter with real size to him. Just consistently year over year shot the ball well, grades out well as a catch and shoot guy, percentage wise from 3, the volume from 3, that's all good. Polished rim finisher, very comfortable playing without the ball. Colorado over the years, he played with guys like KJ Simpson. He played with Cody Williams. Nick Clifford was there for a little bit. There have been other prospects on these Colorado teams. Jabari Walker was on this team a couple years ago. So like he knows how to play without the ball at a really high level. And I thought as the year went on, he got much more assertive as a cutter. Defensively, he's got a lot of feel to him, knows where to be, but also he's on the skinnier side, which can like the negative of that is that he's a little bit easy to move around. He's not the most physical guy in the world, but I think the plus side of that is that he is really long. He's going to have plus length if you play him at the 3, can keep Scotty Barnes playing at the 4, where he can do some of the help rim protection stuff, push RJ down to the 2 line, and just provide additional spacing on the court for RJ to get downhill, for Scotty to get downhill, and just bolster that interior game a little bit.
So I like that you mentioned Da Silva because at the very start of the draft process, whenever the season ended 3 years ago, I really, really liked Da Silva. I kind of had him as my guy, and I still like him. But I think the defense thing has kind of made me soften just a little bit. I agree. Like when you watch him, clearly passes the knows where to stand test, which is like the most important test for any basketball player. And like has like good defensive smarts and instincts, but just like as a lockdown wing guy, I'm not sure I totally buy that that's going to be in his future. Right. No. And so with RJ Barrett having been as bad at defense as he was this past season, I do kind of fear that like a 2-3 of Barrett da Silva, if you're thinking a couple of years down the line, I don't think da Silva will start as a rookie or anything like that. But I do think that is a little bit light on wing defense, especially when you factor in Grady Dick also being on this team. And so I'm having trouble with the defense side of things. Everything else, like he's an adult who knows how to play basketball and do it in a lot of ways, and I love that. But can you at all sort of calm my fears about the defense, or is that just kind of always going to be a thing?
It's going to be a thing for him. The issue is once you get to this range for a lot of the wings, they're tilted to one side of the court. You either have your Kevin McCullers, where it's like the shot just really might not be there. Or you have your Da Silvas and, some of these other guys where the shot is really good and the size is good, but the actual like ability to lock a guy down might not be there. I will say I thought he did a pretty good job of like sliding and staying in front. And like even in plays where guys bully him a little bit, he does still use his length to get into the ball. So I don't think he's going to be like mincemeat out there. Like I don't think he's going to be terrible. But I don't think he's going to be like a super plus defender. But that said, I don't think there's guys on the board at this stage that really fit that profile, especially if Kevin McCullough is off the board. And I'm like more optimistic about Kevin McCullough shooting than a lot of people are. But I think if you're the Raptors, maybe, a guy who's like moderate volume, moderate results at 23 is not the most enticing floor spacing threat.
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, give me another wing, or big. Someone who might be there for the Raptors at 19, who you think would be a good fit.
Yeah, so let's go big. I've seen this guy sliding down boards, and he's a little bit polarizing, but I think people just kind of don't understand his game fully. Kyle Filipowski from Duke.
Okay, talked about him a couple days ago.
Yeah, so there's some like flaws to him. Like he's not a great interior finisher. He's not the longest guy in the world. But he just presents such a rare skill set offensively as like a legitimate dribble, pass, shoot big man who's almost 7 feet tall. Like he had an exceptionally high assist rate for a center. Like he can actually put it on the deck and like really make bigs dance. Not just like I can drive in a straight line if a clunky big man closes out. Like he can legitimately put it on the deck. Good defensive rebounder. It had a really high steal rates. Like defensively, like there's some really nice feel stuff. He actually does quite well in space. And a comp that he gets is a guy that was on the Raptors, Kelly Olynyk. A lot. He's a much better rim protector than Kelly Olynyk was coming out. Higher block rate against a better level of competition, much better moving his feet in space, and also just a much more creative offensive force than Kelly Olynyk was at that same point in time. So like that's a guy that he gets compared to a lot because tall, white, not a great wingspan. But he is a much more complete prospect than Kelly Olynyk. And he also did a really good job of just like stopping opponents at the rim. Like he's not the most vertical guy, but his opponent at rim field goal percentage rated out well. He had a solid block rate. Like he does the center stuff on defense at least well enough that I think it can compensate for the interior finishing on offense, which again, this is a team where we're more concerned about other guys putting that pressure on the rim and him alleviating that paint area and giving them space. So I think he's just a really nice fit on this team.
Yeah, that's interesting because like when I've watched Filipowski, I've kind of thought, oh, this guy's just like a gigantic playmaking four. And I do think like that runs a little overlap with Olynyk. That not that you should be worried about overlap with Olynyk. He's only going to be on the team for 2 years, and you could always just have him be less of a key cog in the rotation. And I think my sort of main desire in a big has been someone who offers like a little more switchability, a little bit more of like someone who can be in tandem with Olynyk in second units. Could Filipowski build that, do you think?
Absolutely.
Like if he can be a 5 and hang there, then I think that maybe changes my feelings on him for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be matchups where the 5 thing is going to be tough. Like just looking at the Eastern Conference, like I don't love him against. I mean, honestly, like a lot of these matchups, I kind of like him. The more I look at, like Embiid is the obvious one, right? Like Embiid would be a nightmare.
He eats everyone's lunch, though, right?
Sure, exactly. Yeah. But I think at the same time, too, you guys can like use that to be a little too dismissive of like strength concerns. But you look at like Horford and Porzingis, and like I feel okay about that. I feel okay about Hartenstein. Brook Lopez is more perimeter oriented offensively. Jared Allen, might give him some problems. And even like Wendell Carter, like a lot of these teams, as the league goes more 5 out, I think the more bigs you have that can like guard that, but still have that rim protection underlining that is important. So I do think if nothing else, he is a guy who can play the 5 comfortably in certain lineups. And then you hope that as the game evolves, that like those are just the lineups that people play more often, which I think is entirely possible.
That makes sense. Do you think he could Moonlight as a 4, like say playing next to Jakob Poeltl with like Scotty Barnes up to the 3 and kind of jumbo looks.
Absolutely. I think again, like there's going to be matchups at the 4 that I don't love for him.
Right.
But I do think it's something that he's definitely capable of.
Awesome. All right. Give me one more guy. It can be big or wing. I do not care. Just someone who might be a nice fit at 19.
So let's go a little like riskier with it and do an upside kind of play. How do you feel about Keshon George from Miami?
I quite like Kyshawn George. I have said he kind of reminds me of if Kyle Anderson could shoot threes.
Yes,
just
that's
like
exactly the comp I like to make. Yeah.
I love it. Look at this. I promise I'm not like lifting that from anywhere either. I just moves very slowly and like it's very fun. It's kind of offbeat. Like so a little more on George. Give the pitch for him at 19.
Yeah, so Kyshawn George is a 6'8" like dude who's just a sniper. Like he is a true blue long range shooter. He's older for a freshman. Like I think he's already 20. But he shot 40.8% from 3 on over 10 attempts per 100 possessions. And he also had a high assist rate. He had like a 16.3 assist rate. So like there is that Kyle Anderson style, slow but playmaking funk kind of thing. He's got some rhythm and rock with his handle, sees the open floor really well, can live dribble pass, but just NBA range and really capable shooter. Also a little bit thick, like one of those dudes that like maybe you run him off screens, maybe he sets screens to get open. Like a lot of different ways that you can utilize him. I wonder if you could even run like super high pick and roll and almost short roll him to the 3-point line. Like there's just a lot of different ways that you can leverage the chops that he has. Also, I think Miami was a really poor ball movement team in general. So I think his assist rate might have looked better if he'd been on like a more cohesive functional team outside of himself. Came on strong in the second half of the year. Defensively, he's a little slow-footed again. Like the lateral agility isn't great. But he is really long and he's really tough to get around at the point of attack. Really like his hands on the ball. Knows how to get around a ball screen. Help instincts are there. Ground coverage is solid. Like again, like we're not getting like lockdown and 3-point shooting guys at this stage. But again, this is a guy that's going to open up the floor a little bit. He's going to be able to make those 0.5 offensive decisions. And you just have to hope that the driving stuff gets better. Like he really never got downhill. Like the amount of times that he actually drove to the basket were very few and far between. He's much more comfortable just playing behind the 3-point line or playing in the mid range. That stuff does have to come along and it's going to take some time and patience, but there's aren't a lot of 6'8" guys that shoot it this well at his age that also have a level of playmaking feel and like the ability to not stink on defense. And that's what Kyshawn George has.
Yeah, I've seen some like detractors of his defense out there, and I don't really agree. Like when I've watched him, and look, I've watched him a lot less than the people who are making these claims, but like you said, like he's thick, he's strong. Like I feel like he can kind of just keep people in front of him through pure force of will more than that sort of, really quick lateral sliding, things like that. So I think of the guys, say compared to Tristan da Silva, for example, like I would totally bank on George being like a more lockdown wing guy than da Silva. I don't even think it's
well, and that's like a philosophy thing that I think about a lot. It's like with George being 3 years younger, is he perhaps actually the better prospect?
Right.
Like, and that's, not a popular line of thinking, but I think it's a possible outcome for sure.
Sure. Well, you've had some really great, sound, thoughtful takes on all these guys. We're going to get on the other side into some of my most firmly held beliefs on the draft so far. And look, these are going to be wildly misinformed and probably wrong. You're going to tell me why, or hey, maybe I'm right. We'll come back on the other side and get into that to close out the show. All right, rounding things out here with Maxwell Baumbach from No Ceilings. Everyone go check out No Ceilings. It's wonderful. All right, I think I have 3 pretty firmly held draft takes that I just want to throw at you. See what you think. Am I out of my mind? Number 1, Ryan Dunn, the Virginia wing who is widely regarded as the best defensive player in this draft, would simply be a do not draft for me if I were the Toronto Raptors. I don't think his offense is it. I think the 20% from 3 and 53% from the line is enough for me to say, I don't know how this works on a team with Scotty Barnes and currently Jakob Poeltl. Ryan Dunn is a do not draft for me. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I think with the 31st pick, it's fine.
Okay.
I would not in the first round if I were the Raptors.
Okay.
So I actually posed the question on Twitter the other day, like, what is Ryan Dunn's offensive role in the NBA? I struggle mightily with Ryan Dunn. Like, he is an outlier defensively. Like, he is a phenomenal defensive prospect. Really good on the ball, excellent ground coverage guy. His balance is insane. Had a block rate over 10, which would be stellar for a center. He had a steal rate of 3.1. Like, outlier great defender, outlier bad offensive player, unfortunately. I have like a metric tool that I kind of use personally. He had a red flag assist rate. The amount of his scoring volume was a red flag. His 3-point percentage, 3-point volume, catch and shoot 3-point percentage, his usage rate, all red flags. Like, it is it. I've never seen such a red flag laden offensive profile. What I will say is he's very strong downhill. I think he can actually dribble a little bit. And I think he's got a little bit of downhill passing. I think there are worlds where you can play him as a 4 if you do have that spacing around him and use him almost as like a roll man. I'm like even doubting it myself as I say. He's not the biggest dude in the world. Like, he's 6'8", 7'1" wingspan. Those are great measurements for a forward. If I'm picking at 31, I think there's a chance that I just say, you know what, maybe we'll figure out the offense thing at some point and take this guy who is just outlier good in one area and hope that the outlier bad can be remedied. But I would not take him at 19 for the Raptors.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And yeah, I mean, 31, yeah, I could see a little bit more. Even then, man.
Even then, I think there's going to be guys on the board.
Grim scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
My second most firmly held draft take, and look, these things are fleeting. I change my mind on things all the time. But right now, my absolute favorite guy I want the Raptors to take at 19 is DaRon Holmes II.
Yeah.
And I think he actually, I know he played center a lot at college. I think 95% of his minutes in the NBA come as a 3 or a 4. And I think the guys he most reminds me of are championship season Pascal Siakam and modern day Jaden McDaniels. I think this dude can, like, maybe he hasn't been sort of asked to do it yet, but he just seems like the kind of guy who is enormous, long, kind of impossible to get around, who has this sort of funky package of offensive moves to go to, maybe never going to be a primary guy or anything like that. You know, Pascal Siakam went from that to like this whole other world of awesome that I don't see in Holmes's future, but
sure,
I really love the package with Holmes. I love his little post game. I love all the little things he does, the pick and pop stuff. To me, he features as like, the ideal 3-4 hybrid forward for any team in the modern NBA. I love DaRon Holmes. Tell me why I'm wrong.
So I see Holmes more as a big. Like, the idea of the 3 is like way too rich for me. I see him as like a 4-5 big. I don't think he has the lateral agility of like a Jaden McDaniels. Like, I don't think he's that quick. I don't think he has the power, like downhill force of a Siakam, but I think he's really good. Like, I think at 19, I don't bat an eye if that's who the Raptors take. I have him in that range. Stellar ball handler for his size. Like, Dayton would have him just bring the ball up the court and like run inverted pick and roll stuff with him. Like, he is very skilled with the ball in his hands, and that's new. He came into college as a post-up big. The intel on him is stellar. This is a kid who really wants to like round out his game and get better at every single aspect of the game, and you see it on the court. Even just with the passing decisions he made. He was always one of those guys that was a capable passer, but not a good passer. Like, he could do really cool stuff, and now he's a genuinely great decision maker. Defensively, has some real ball screen versatility. I wish he was a little stronger, a little bit more physical on the glass. Like, that's the thing that kind of hangs me up with him a little bit, is like kind of the same questions you had about Filipowski. Like, is the interior stuff all the way there with Holmes? Sure. But I think at worst, you're getting one of the more interesting, scheme versatile, competent backup centers in the league. Right. Like, I think Holmes has a really safe floor on him, especially when you take the character stuff into consideration. Like, he is a very, very hard worker who has transformed the way he plays and gotten great results from the work he's put in. So I think that would be a good pick at 19 if that were the route they were to go.
Perhaps not as bullish as I am, but nobody is. I'm the DaRon Holmes head, apparently. And sure. I'm glad to be a little bit vindicated in my unabashed belief. All right, last one for you. This one's like, it's got some heat to it. You know,
let's go.
I think the most likely player in this draft and look, the likelihood of this happening is infinitesimal. It's probably not happening, but the most likely player in this draft to win a scoring title in the NBA is Jaylen Tyson. That dude
Ooh,
can score, and he can do it in a whole bunch of different ways. And I'm not saying that I think he's going to win a scoring title, but I think he's my favorite scorer in this draft. Maybe Rob Dillingham, sort of notwithstanding, but I don't like Rob Dillingham all that much. I really, really like Jaylen Tyson. Would be super down if he were a Raptors pick. Give me the thoughts on. It seems like you strongly disagree with this one, which hey, fair enough. It's kind of an insane take.
So I like Jaylen Tyson, and I think if there's a little bit of rewiring to how he goes about his approach, which like Cal, so he played for Cal last year. Cal was very bad. Jaylen Tyson got his eligibility waiver, and Cal was like a perfectly fine Pac-12 team after that. They needed Jaylen Tyson to play the way he played college basketball. Like, I'm not saying like, actually, he shouldn't have been in the mid-post. That's what they needed to do to win games. Like, they had to do it. Where he scores and how he goes about scoring is going to look a lot different in the NBA. He's got a lot of like pretty mid-range stuff, which I love as like a bailout option. He's going to have to be a lot more straight line in the NBA. He wasn't great as a driver this past year. He does have a tendency to settle when he creates advantages and take pull-ups instead of getting all the way to the rim. His decision-making, like, I think the floor, and I hate doing like negative draft talk, the floor looks something like Denzel Valentine to me, where like occasionally he just makes some really frustrating decisions with the ball as a passer or like with the shot selection. Like, that's the stuff that scares me. I worry about the defense with him. But I do think he's a really capable scorer. And similar to DaRon Holmes, I think he's like a capable passer. Like, he has his moments where it's like, you can see the gears are turning. This stuff just needs to kind of be workshopped. Had kind of a weird journey through college basketball that like definitely plays a part of it. And a lot of that was not his fault also. But yeah, I think he's a good scorer. I worry what he looks like in a complementary role. If like the decision-making passing stuff is going to be there, if the defense is going to be there. And if he's going to take the right shots when he's in a more tertiary role.
I knew I had a bad take in here. That was it.
I think he's good. He's in the first round for me right now. So I don't think he's bad. I see some people that are really high on him, and I just have more reservations on his game than others, I think.
That's fair enough. For what it's worth, I don't think anyone in this draft class is ever going to win a scoring title. Would Dillingham be your guy if there was one?
I guess, yeah. Maybe. Because I don't
resounding support.
Well, I like, and like the thing is, like, I feel like I like this class a little bit more than a lot of people, but like I just don't see like a scoring title guy in there. I guess it would have to be Dillingham. It would have to be like Dillingham under the right circumstances. And I'm not even a huge, like you, I'm not a huge Dillingham guy, but I think if you were to say, you gun to your head, you got to pick a scoring title guy, it's probably Dillingham.
The circumstance feels like similar to the 2005-2006 Toronto Raptors, where Mike James just decides, I'm averaging 20 a game. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm taking every shot. If Rob Dillingham has a Mike James season in him, he could just go well and win a scoring title. And I think we'd all be better for having seen it.
For sure. I agree with that.
All right, Maxwell. All right, we'll wrap it here. Just give me one last stray parting shot. Guy we didn't talk about who you maybe had lined up a thought on, regarding 19 or 31 for the Raptors. The floor is yours. What you got?
Yeah. A guy that I don't know like how good the fit is here per se, but a guy that I really like is Nick Clifford from Colorado State. And it's with draw deadline day, so he may end up going back. But I thought Nick Clifford was like the best downhill player in this class. I'll throw out one other guy too that I think actually is a better fit, Pacome Dadiet. Who played for Ulm in Germany. 6'8", one of the best like off the dribble mid-range scorers in this class among the forwards, and he's very young, really good catch and shoot guy, really good downhill guy. Doesn't totally know how to play yet. Like, some of the connective passing stuff is a little shaky. Some of the defensive awareness is a little bit shaky, but the tools are awesome, and the effort's off the charts. Like, his work rate is exceptionally high. He doesn't get talked about a lot as a first-round guy at this point. If he climbs to 19, it wouldn't stun me, honestly. Just because there aren't a lot of guys with his size that can score at all three levels and play as hard as he does. But I think he's highway robbery at 31.
Fascinated by Dadiet. I got to look a little more into him because it sounds like the kind of player I will enjoy, and sounds like the kind of player that Masai Ujiri will enjoy.
Yeah.
6'8", does lots of stuff, very raw and young. Yep, okay, that sounds good. We will leave it there. Maxwell, thank you so much. This was delightful. It was informative. It made me feel smarter and also dumber at the same time. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, check us out at No Ceilings NBA on the Hell website, at Boundboards to find me on there. NoCeilingsNBA.com. Subscribe. We got daily podcasts, daily written work. Check out everything we're doing.
Awesome, man. And everyone go check out his piece on Khalil Ware. We didn't really talk about him today, but I'm kind of intrigued. And if he's the guy at 19, I wouldn't be upset. Seems like a boomer bust type guy, but there's lots of boom sort of potential there with a lot of the stuff he does. So go check that piece out. Very, very informative. I think probably one of the more thoughtful takes on Khalil Ware, who seems to kind of get very lazily talked about by a lot of people who cover this stuff. Not by you. It was wonderful. So everyone go and check that out.
Really
you can find... Thank you. Of course, man. You can find me at Woodley Sean on the Hell website. You can follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Wherever you get your podcast, it's much appreciated when you support the show, however you support the show. We'll be back again on Friday. Our pal Jamar Hines should be along. I'm still working on schedule with him, but we'll have some fun, talk about something. Maybe we'll pull some more names from a hat for the wing positions for free agency and trades and stuff like that. You can go check out the first episode of that milieu on Wednesday. So go do that. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the crowning of the Dallas Mavericks or the comeback that's on by the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight and all that good stuff. We will talk to you again on Friday. Another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.